We'll go ahead and get started, and we'll start with June.
All right, good morning, everyone. This is June Kinoshita. I am PM1 here in the Disaster Planning Unit. Should be sharing my screen. Melanie, you can confirm that you see my opening slide, please?
Confirmed, yes, I can see it.
Perfect, thank you. So again, good morning, everyone. June Kinoshita. I'm with the Disaster Planning Unit, and as many of you know, we have been working on the Catastrophic Incident Base Plan update to the 2008 base plan. And we've been using this way forward concept. You'll hear us talk about that. And it's a new approach to catastrophic incident planning that we've presented in MARACs over a year ago, and then have provided updates. And then so just coming back to provide updates on where we're at and make sure that folks have the awareness that we're working on this and give people the opportunity to continue to comment. So today's real quick presentation, just wanted to give you an update on the status of the plan, where we're at, what we're working on. We put together a series of workshops, and so wanted to report out. This is probably really the key part of this presentation, is report out on who we talked to, what some of the themes that we heard back from everyone were, and how that's going to play into the way that we move forward. That includes a discussion of the concept of operations, and then starting to frame the training and exercise program that would be associated with this way forward concept. So we've been working with our California emergency support functions partners to take a lot of the content from the Southern California Catastrophic Earthquake Plan, but also broaden that content to put into the Catastrophic Incident Base Plan draft. We do have a framework and a draft that is being reviewed by our management internally here at Cal. We have to make sure that we're taking some of these concepts and capturing what we need to. We are reorganizing it a little bit, and we're trying to address some of the concerns and comments that we've heard back from all levels of government and tribes to make a more streamlined, comprehensive, consistent suite of catastrophic incident plans. So although we're working on the catastrophic incident base plan draft, we're also keeping in the back of our mind updating the other catastrophic incident plans. And I wanted to emphasize the definition of catastrophic here. There's a couple aspects of that. And one of those is that many of you have heard me talk about how we plan for catastrophic incidents, because if we develop the capabilities that we need to address California's worst case scenarios, that means that we have the capabilities in hand to address the other disasters that may not reach that scale of catastrophic across the state. And definitely, I think all of us would agree that one of the things we're seeing are larger, more impactful disasters and emergencies across the state, as well as a renewed emphasis on the long-term recovery that we need to following these incidents. And so the definition of catastrophic is the one that we're using. It's from our website. I'll invite all of you to visit that. But it's really, we're talking the worst case scenario. That means the thousands of casualties, damage to infrastructure that will have long-term ramifications, thousands of people displaced, having to be moved around the state. Really many of the things that we've experienced, but expanded across a larger geographic range. And it will, the key part of that is that it will almost immediately overwhelm local, state capabilities, and almost immediately require federal disaster declaration and participation. So that definition is important, again, because it drives the capabilities that we're trying to produce or develop, and that those are capabilities that can be shared across the state. So we are very much working towards that document that coordinates all of those different capabilities. So part of that, of course, is what we heard loud and clear from some of the earlier MARAC meetings, the briefings that we did, plus a survey that was sent out, is that really one of the gaps that was identified in the planning process was the ability to understand how the state level coordination plan meshes with the local emergency operations plans, and then again also with the federal capabilities that we'll need to bring to bear. And so we started out putting together a series of workshops. We thought that the in person would be most attractive to folks, and so we were trying to set up workshops around the state where we actually went out and met with people to be able to hear what they were saying and engage in that conversation. Um, Pretty quickly, though, the feedback that we got was that, and I'll talk about this more, was that there was a value to the online options or the virtual options. So we actually transitioned and wound up offering these both in person and online. So we started out back in September. We were invited to the DisasterCon conference there in Humboldt and hosted by Humboldt County and Blue Lake Rancheria. This was an opportunity to pilot with a group of folks that have been really engaged over the last several years. And you can see there we had over 35 people in attendance there. October, Cal OES Coastal Region hosted a workshop. Again, it was starting to evolve already, but we had 50 online participants, 12 people in the room. We hosted one that was specifically focused on some of the issues that we anticipate the tribal nations might want to talk about, and we had good online participation with them. And then Inland Region hosted several, Visalia, Red Bluff, and Sacramento, really quickly there, all three of them in a row. And we had pretty good representation from counties and some of the more cities, local participants. We did offer one in Santa Ana, the southern region, over 40 folks online, 10 in-person participants. Had a good cross section of private sector, NGO, some federal participation on many of these. And then, although this wasn't a specific workshop, we did have an opportunity to go and present at the Oakland U.S. hosted by the U.S. Coast Guard Sector San Francisco, and we had many of the same discussions, just focused on a particular that federal innovation part. But we also had some counties and local government representatives there. So quite a few series of workshops. We thought that those were actually incredibly productive, and we're going to talk a little bit about why. One of the key components of that then, the workshops focused on presenting an overview of catastrophic incident planning, again, addressing some of those questions that I discussed a minute ago. Like why do we plan for catastrophic level incidents? What is the definition of catastrophic? What are the ramifications? What are some of the tools that we have? And then one of the parts that was most important and set the stage for capturing that feedback were the facilitated questions. So the first one was, do the concepts of continuity and planning for catastrophic incidents resonate with you? And we include continuity in there because there's a close tie to continuity of government and catastrophic incident planning. Because when we look at that definition, this will definitely be a continuity event for certainly local governments and agencies, but all the way up to some of the federal installations that we might be traditionally relying on to help us respond to this level of incident. So you will see the tie to continuity intertwined through our catastrophic incident planning. Do the state processes link with your emergency management protocols and processes? And do they provide timely support? We'll talk in more detail about that here in a second, but one of the questions that this is a state level coordination plan, but it needs to be able to integrate and be consistent with all the different state level plans, but also local emergency operations plans, federal plans. This is a key part of that linkage. Right? With a lot of new systems coming online, we also want to make sure that that we're able to continue to provide timely support and what that looks like. Are there hazards or threats that or other changes that are not addressed in state level coordination? Other areas of emphasis or focus that need to be addressed? The catastrophic incident base plan and a lot of the catastrophic incident plans that we do have reflect the state hazard mitigation plans, those threats and hazards that are identified in that. And again, using that definition of catastrophic, there's a reason why we focused on those particular aspects. But we recognize that the environment in which we work, the threats and hazards are changing. And this is an opportunity for folks to look at what they're facing and anticipate how we might incorporate those things into our planning, and even if there are things that we're missing that we need to talk about. Great example of that is our increased reliance on cyber resources. So our cybersecurity, our electronic databases that we use, the communication devices, that has definitely changed dramatically over the last 25 years. And then the other obvious example is climate change and how that plays into the disasters that we're already responding to. So then what tools might help facilitate state level support of local response? We're seeing a new emphasis on cyber communications and our databases. We have an amazing evolution in the tools that we use to model what those disasters are going to look like, what planning factors we should utilize to develop our plans and capabilities. And then again, looking at that definition of what's catastrophic, like how does that really how do those that state level support change, and should it, like what tools do we use, right? What organizational structures, communication structures, maybe even financing structures should we anticipate needing? What kinds of training and exercise or specific topics would you like to see, and what gaps, and how would those trainings or exercise address those gaps? That is something that we heard loud and clear. And one of the challenges with our existing suite of catastrophic incident plans is that we write these plans and then we haven't done as good a job as we need to getting it socialized. And again, that was one of the driving factors for those workshops, the socializing and training and exercising, testing the capabilities that we say that we're going to implement. And then again, what future changes do you anticipate, and are there opportunities to build these into these plans? Where are we going? One of the things that I work on quite a bit is the advanced planning and intelligence unit when we're activated here at the SOC, and I find it fascinating to look at the cascading effects of disasters and the way that our systems are so intertwined that in many cases it anticipating what the next need is going to be is a real challenge, but we have an opportunity there to look forward in this plan. So we asked those questions, tried to engage folks in discussion in the moment, but then also provided the slides and those questions for discussion later. And in a few cases, we got some great feedback after the fact as folks were able to think about those questions, and we very much appreciated that. So the workshops evolved. We discovered that people really appreciated the virtual format, and so we again shifted to although I love the in-person networking and relationships that can be built. getting the information out and giving folks the chance to participate, provide feedback in the electronic or a digital virtual format was very much appreciated as well. Just within our staff, we discovered that two presenters was key. The image on the right, I presented basically by myself. And what I discovered was that it was a little more challenging to get the read the language of the room, to capture the feedback, to take notes, to be able to really hear what people were saying. And so the two presenters was, some of it was logistical, but some of it was also really being able to hear what the information that was coming back. This was an opportunity. We assumed that we'd be, and we were excited about the chance to meet some of our county partners, city partners, some of our NGO partners, and that certainly was part of that. But it also unexpectedly allowed me to meet many of our Cal OES regional staff that had met only briefly or only in virtually online. And so that really was a surprising but rewarding benefit of these workshops was because of this link between the catastrophic plans and what we're doing here at the State Operations Center and how the information is flowing from operational areas, counties, cities, NGOs, all our tribal partners back up to the SOC and then back out from the SOC. We heard a lot of appreciation for the effort of coming out to meet with folks, and we are definitely pushing that back up to our leaderships. And this is something that the socialization is critical and it's important. And there's really good information that came out of these workshops. We heard that some of the less populated or smaller geographically operational areas or cities were concerned about being lower priority. One of the perceptions was that if you weren't covered by the catastrophic incident plans, then maybe you weren't as important. And we wanted to emphasize that that is absolutely not the case, that the plans that we have are driven by the threats and hazards addressed in the state hazard mitigation plan. And that, so there are concerns that we've heard that we are going to try to address it. We also heard concerns about the way the REOCs are no longer being used, the physical facility, and how that transfer of information of the function is actually taking place. That was a concern that we passed on to our leadership, and that's something that needs to be exercised and addressed. I already talked about this concept of developing the capabilities. We also heard that the constant activations and diversity of disasters and emergencies are a challenge to participating in the planning process for socializing, training, and exercise. And that's something that we need to at least recognize. And then after action reviews of state and local integration are needed. We do a good job of doing ARs for our particular silos, but there's an opportunity there to get a better look at how that information flows up and down, or how the coordination happened. Again, consistent, one of the largest themes that we heard out of the workshops was that we need more training and exercise. Right? We recognize that with these plans, they tend to be large, that when we ask ourselves, are the plans being used? And if the answer is no, the question is why? And then the answer is sometimes because they're inaccessible. They're just too big. And we don't train and exercise so that we don't really know what's in the plans. So we're seeing a lot of growth and movement in the discipline of emergency management. And that means that there's some experience that we're losing, institutional knowledge is being lost. there's a lot of change going on, and sometimes that means that there are gaps. And so the training and exercise would be an important part of addressing that. The training exercise, as we saw through the workshops, it encourages networking and relationships, and those continue to pay dividends. I don't think anyone would deny that. New systems such as the donations portal, EOC 365, exercising our local integration. There's a lot of new systems, processes that are being introduced that play, each of them are parts of that puzzle that add up to an efficient and consistent response. And if we're not training and exercising, then we're not taking advantage of the power of those new systems. We thought it was interesting. There were a lot of other threats and hazards or considerations that were brought up in the workshop. Several more beyond this, but a few of the ones that were repeated several times were biohazards, drought and water treatment, larger tsunamis, the impacts of homeowners insurance on our response and recovery, tied into the housing crisis and vulnerable populations, taking rural communities as a whole, multiple and ongoing disasters. We talked about those. And that also gets to the cascading effects of having disasters occurring simultaneously, like atmospheric rivers and an earthquake or a large social event. That last bullet, large scale special events such as the Olympics, World Cup, some of the award ceremonies, and how those specific plans are integrated into the catastrophic incident plans or state planning as a whole. We talked a lot about the complexities of this system that we've developed. The state emergency plan is in review. It's about to be signed. That sets that framework based on the Emergency Services Act for how we respond and recover. And so a lot of as we try to tie state level coordination in with federal resources and capabilities, and then the local emergency operations plans, having a common language and an understanding of those terms and those concepts and how we can use those is, I think, going to be one of the most important parts of this plan. And so we throw around these concepts such as line of effort, phases, core capabilities, lifelines, how the ESFs play into those, task forces, multi-agency coordination groups. And so one of the things we're working on is mapping out whether folks are using those at the local level, how we're using them at the state level, and whether they mean the same thing when we ask our federal partners to bring their capabilities to the table. When we introduced that previous graphic, which was just me brainstorming like some of the concepts that folks were asking about, we had a local partner come back with a series of about 12 slides that really fleshed those concepts out. And what I thought was amazing was the way that he started to think about how we introduce these concepts and how we can illustrate how those all fit together. Like, when is the right time to use that particular conceptual tool, like a task force versus a multi-agency coordination? And so this is the summary of about 12 slides that he developed based on that initial slide that I presented. And this is the level of engagement that I thought was a huge success coming out of that, because it not only did it give me the opportunity to understand how some of our county partners were looking at the information or thinking about the information that we were presenting, but really what tools would be useful for them in order to illustrate some of these concepts. And so I invite everyone again to take a look at these things and engage us with how we might best illustrate the concepts and articulate when we use particular tools. I've been talking about the importance of the training and exercise. Again, this previous graph, these concepts. The system that we've developed is complex. The cascading and compounding effects of disasters are complex. Um, and again, that really drives the importance of a training and exercise program. And that is going to include, we're working on developing that right now. The Southern California Catastrophic Earthquake Plan, even before it was signed, we had hosted a series of workshop seminars. And those really serve as a model for me as I conceptualize how we can start to approach um, getting the information out, showing folks what is in the plan, but then also continuing to update a dynamic plan so that it, test what we say we're going to do in the plan, and if it's not working, come back and update it. Right? Again, we're approaching this planning effort as a dynamic approach to planning, and really looking for opportunities to continue to evolve that plan, see what works, what doesn't work, and come back and update it. So we're looking at a series of seminars all the way through full-scale exercises that would give us the chance to test those into that plan, update it, reshape that, especially with eyes towards updating the other catastrophic incident level plans. Some of the themes or areas that came out of the workshops that folks said that they would like to see us to work on are a state level exercise. And we envision using continuity injects, assuming that there will be people that are unfamiliar with their roles and responsibilities. Again, this addresses that idea that there's a lot of movement in emergency management, lots of people moving around, lots of new positions being created and being filled, which is great. But it also means that we're losing some institutional knowledge. We need to train and exercise to get our skills and capabilities back up. Some of the areas that we could test in a state level exercise would be delegations of authority and the way that succession works. Local integration, again, the past role of the REOC, how is that being filled today? How does that information flow? The California emergency support functions, that's how the state emergency plan is organized, but it recognizes that many local counties, cities use the departmental operations center model, and we need to better understand how that crosswalk works. How do we make sure that we're talking about the same thing? Integrating with local plans, making sure that we're using consistent concepts, language, and that when the time comes, we know how to work those things together, that we're not conflicting. Federal integration, FEMA, how do we work with them? Their system is slightly different than the California system. How do we crosswalk between those and make sure that we're as efficient as possible? Our Department of Defense partners have been very clear that we traditionally rely on them for certain capabilities. They are being stretched thin. We are looking at what happens if their ability to respond and help us is compromised, either by a completely different mission set and or the fact that their installation may be compromised. Right? How do we access their resources? That is also a very complicated system that we need to continue to train and exercise with. Our emergency support function specific, a lot of growth and development in our state agency partners. How do we make sure that we're able to continue to access their capabilities? I alluded to the role of advanced planning earlier. Really looking at the cascading compounding effects of these disasters and anticipating how we may need to prioritize for getting power, water, transportation back to certain critical infrastructure so that we can continue to support the response itself. concepts of community lifelines. How do we convey information? How do we assess the severity of a situation, the status of a situation? How do we convey that information to our partners, and especially the public? How do we convey where we're at, what we're accomplishing to the public? And then, of course, the integration with recovery, always important to um, emphasize these days, seeing that grow. We're on a very tight time frame. A lot of these you will see across the top here, they're to be determined. Some of that has to do with the recent activations and disasters that we've been addressing. Some of that also has to do with our state agencies and partners being pulled into those activations, ourselves being pulled into that. We are very much looking forward to the next steps will be working with our Department of Defense, both state and federal Department of Defense, military partners, incorporating utilities, private sector, commodity movement and logistics, and then looking at our relationships with our other state partners. So some of the states that surround California. I'm recognizing that California plays an important role in the economies, but also the response and recovery to those states, but also that we'll be relying on them as well. So that relationship is going to be very, very important. And then, as I've already emphasized, the importance of this training and exercise program, and really taking advantage of a lot of the great work that many of you are already doing to incorporate these concepts, building that consistency, supporting you as you put forth your training and exercise programs, and integrating those with our training and exercise vision. We're a small unit. Cal OES has some capabilities to put on workshops and training and exercise, but really the value add there is when we're supporting some of the training and exercises and seminars, workshops that are already happening out there. And so we're looking at opportunities to build the relationship through updates such as this to be able to really leverage that. And then we're ultimately the draft, we're going to have several other opportunities for folks to provide feedback on the content of the plan and the way it's arranged. And so we're looking forward to getting out some drafts to folks so they can see how their content that they've already provided is being integrated in. And so lots going on. I will put my contact information in the chat. Very much looking forward to an ongoing dialogue about what we're doing, and will make myself available to answer any questions or hear your feedback as needed. So Melanie, with that, I will hand it back to you.
Thank you so much, June. I appreciate your presentation. And when you send over the slides, I'll send it out to everybody that's on the call. Does
Perfect.
anybody have any questions? Thank you so much. I'm not seeing, actually, let me check the chat. Sure we don't have any questions. And we don't. Thank you so much, June. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Melanie.
Thank you. We'll turn it over to Cari for the community planning unit.
Good morning. Let me see if I can share here.
Very good. I can see it.
Okay. So good morning, everybody. I'm Cari Porter. I'm the program manager over the community planning unit in planning and preparedness at Cal OES. And I thought, since it's been a while since we started this new process with the county EOP reviews, that it was time to kind of check in and see where we're at, and maybe remind some people or inform maybe some new people what it is when we're talking about this. Oh, let's see if my own clicker will go to the next. Okay. So I thought we'd just provide, a real quick overview, touch on the process, go over some of the frequent recommendations we've seen over the last 3 years, and kind of where we're at with getting all the counties reviewed. So really, what started all of this? So Following the 2017 and 18 wildfires, the state auditor was directed to conduct an audit of the 3 counties to assess how well prepared each county is to protect vulnerable populations before, during, and after a natural disaster. And the auditor's report came out finding that California was not adequately prepared to protect its most vulnerable residents, and highlighted vulnerabilities of populations with access and functional needs, as well as some county failures in preparation and state support. So the report recommended that state and counties improve 4 critical areas of planning. That's assessment of populations to determine the needs that communities will have during an emergency, involving community representatives of people with a variety of access and functional needs to provide insight into the planning process, updating emergency plans for alerting, evacuating, and sheltering residents, and using best practices for emergency planning to protect the vulnerable residents during natural disasters. And then this led to several new pieces of legislation regarding county emergency plan submission, the planning process and content, and review. So between 2016 and 24, there have been several bills amending or adding to government code regulating emergency plans. And then in addition, AB 1638, while it didn't specifically address regulating emergency plans, it did add to government code relating to local government providing emergency response services, and it introduced requirements on the manner in which information is provided in languages other than English, and that started January 1st of this year. So one requirement of AB 580 was the requirement for a county to send a copy of its emergency plan to Cal OES on or before March 1st of 2022, and upon any update to the plan after that date. So we have received, all the older versions by that deadline. The legislation specifies county, but for the purposes of the review and any subsequent review, counties can submit their operational area plan if that OA plan serves as the county plan. So even though the legislation says county, the operational plan covers that if that's what's used as the county plan. I'm not going to go into the details of all of these pieces, just to kind of touch on the topic areas covered. So we have, several pieces of legislation had elements pertaining specifically to access and functional needs, content and planning process, and also added on an on-request AFN consultation. And then we have SB 160 addressed cultural competence in emergency operation plans. And as I mentioned, the AB 1638 added some language requirements for providing information. AB 781 addressed pets in shelters and warming and cooling centers. And then most of these the pieces of legislation were specific to counties, but some of them did also mention cities, and I believe AB 781 is one of them that went beyond just the county. So several pieces of legislation, AB 580, 2386, 2968, added and amended sections of the government code pertaining to scheduling and content of emergency plan reviews, which is kind of where we are, what prompted this process. So this included a requirement for Cal OES to review emergency plans from at least 10 counties every year, beginning in 2022, and to complete a review of all county emergency plans by January 1st of 2028. And then Cal OES is to determine a yearly emergency plan review schedule and share it with the counties. Priorities given to counties with a high risk for wildfire disaster. And then additional counties updating plans can add to those 10 selected in the year. And then at the end of each review, counties are to develop and revise its emergency plan to address issues identified. So what changed, beginning in 2022 is, in addition to SIMS, NIMS compliance, there was a list of elements added to the review of emergency plans that was identified in the legislation. These included whether the plan substantially conforms to or exceeds recommendations in FEMA's Comprehensive Preparedness Guide 101 or CPG 101, whether the plan is consistent with the Cal OES proposed best practices, whether the plan protects and accommodates vulnerable populations during natural disasters, whether the plan has established procedures for alerting, evacuating, and sheltering individuals during an emergency, if it has evacuation routes and plans and shelter-in-place plans, including preparations for evacuating or caring for individuals with access and functional needs. And then if there's efforts at community outreach to prepare communities and individuals to take action in the event of an emergency or a disaster. There's accommodations for persons with pets, large animal evacuation plans, and plans to ensure the health and safety of citizens during power outages. So all of these elements are covered in the crosswalk that we use to aid in the review process. And I'll touch a little more on the crosswalk in a couple of slides. So for more detailed information on all of these pieces of legislation, you can refer to our handy dandy legislation fact sheet, which is on the community planning page of the Cal OES website. We'll go into the process a little bit. So the Cal OES review maintains existing relationships with the county and then enrolls some subject matter experts. So the Cal OES Region ESC, the Region Emergency Services Coordinator, remains the point of contact for the county and reviews the plan for compliance with CPG 101 and SIMS. And then the Community Planning Unit coordinates the reviews. And so this includes a panel of subject matter experts that evaluate specific areas from the plan. This includes alert and warning. The Emergency Functions Planning Unit looks at the animal-related elements. Then we have the Office of Access and Functional Needs and the Cal OES Law Branch. So the AFN consultations, if requested, are executed by the Cal OES Office of Access and Functional Needs. And then while not in legislation, cultural competency consultations are offered, and those are executed by the Community Planning Unit when requested. And it's important to note here that while these consultations are offered as part of the EOP review process, these consults can be requested outside of this process. So this chart here kind of goes through the every step of the review process, so I'm not going to go through all of those details here. We do schedule, several weeks before the start of a county EOP review. We schedule a kickoff meetings with the counties to go in more detail what is really in each of these elements. I just wanted to touch on a few areas of this that might be helpful to know ahead of time. And so the key thing that I had mentioned is, what prompts these reviews. And so the primary one is plans are submitted to Cal OES for review if they're one of the 10 selected for that year. As I noted earlier, Cal OES determines a yearly schedule. We communicate that schedule to the selected counties prior to finalizing that list. And then sometimes during the year, it comes up the counties that are updating their plans can also request to be reviewed. And so that's where we get the 10 or more. So sometimes there's some additional ones that weren't on the original list that we incorporate in. And so one of the main points I wanted to get out talking today is if the county is planning an EOP update down the road and when you're looking to do that work, we'd be happy to coordinate the timing of your EOP review to fit your review timeline. So just reach out and, if you're doing your update in 26 and want this review to coincide with that update so that you can incorporate all the most recent stuff, let us know and we can work to make that happen. So really to start the review process, counties are asked to complete an EOP crosswalk to identify how each element is met by the plan, intersecting plans, or the planning process. So this crosswalk as just a review tool. It's not a guide to creating an emergency operation plan and doesn't include every topic that can be addressed in an emergency plan. It also does not prescribe the format that a jurisdiction plan needs to be in, as that is up to the jurisdiction to see how their plan best fits their needs while still complying with the requirements. So this crosswalk is posted on the community planning page of the Cal OES website. And while it's used to aid in the county EOP reviews, other jurisdictions may use the crosswalk for any self-review of their EOPs. So at the initial phase, also along with the crosswalk, the counties are asked to provide a digital version of the EOP and any of the supporting plans and annexes that were identified as meeting the crosswalk elements. We ask that those are submitted with the crosswalk, and we are requesting that 508 compliant, so accessible documents are provided if at all possible, as some of our reviewers do use screen readers. And if they're not 508 compliant yet, we do ask if possible if you could provide us the Word version, and we work as we can to remediate those in-house for review purposes. Again, another note here is that the Cal OES Office of Access and Functional Needs does offer free digital accessibility courses every month, and those you can find by visiting the CSTI training site. And so as part of the process, we're always looking at ways to improve. So we send out surveys and have a hot wash every year. And so after 2023, some of the feedback is the counties wanted to see kind of where we were looking at with the recommendations beforehand. So we did add a wrap up in there. So we do meet with the counties now before we finalize the review summary report to kind of go over those reviews, the recommendations, and have a discussion. And then at the very end, updated plans are submitted to Cal OES. The final plan that is submitted is for our records, not for additional compliance review. Since Cal OES doesn't have implementation authority, we leave the incorporation of the recommendations to the county, but we do ask for any updated plans so that we do have those for our records. So this is just a sample page of the crosswalk. This one has been filled in referencing page numbers. And so elements 1 through 55 are basic elements, including SIMS, NIMS, and CPG 101 elements. So we just ask you to indicate the page number where it's located, and if it's in another annex or plan, to reference which document that is in. And then elements 56 through 73 are elements that were added with this more recent legislation, and those include the AFN and cultural competence. And in those areas, there's room to provide more of a brief description in addition to any page numbers that can talk about how the element is met or will be met in the future. Just another reminder that this crosswalk is posted on the community planning page of the Cal OES website and can be used as a reference at any time or used by other jurisdictions for self-review or any sort of review for, when you're planning your next update, use it as a tool for that. Then now that we've completed 3 years of reviews, we have figured I'd go over just a list of some of the frequent recommendations we see, excluding the AFN and cultural competence recommendations and considerations. So one we see most frequent is item 70, large animal evacuation plans. This includes develop an animal evacuation plan, including large animal demographics, transportation, sheltering, care, biosecurity, carcass disposal, and euthanasia plans. Item 67, status of county emergency alert system. Says identify the notification systems and methods to be used. And alert and warning notifications that extend across multiple jurisdictions should be communicated and coordinated with the impacted and neighboring jurisdictions. Item 4, record of changes, include a table detailing the record of changes, including who's responsible for the EOP's maintenance, change number, data change, and a summary of the change. Some other ones we have, item 35, and these items coincide with where how they're numbered on the crosswalk. So item 35 is recovery organization, include an organizational chart or diagram for recovery, identifying positions that are involved in the recovery process. And this includes, public, private, NGOs, and ensuring that access and functional needs are identified in the recovery process. We have item 54, specific threat annexes. This is adding specific threat annexes to address response activities that are specific to hazards that pose a threat to the jurisdiction. And these can be addressed in either annexes to the EOP or in a standalone plan and then referenced in the EOP. And then item 55, develop a dam annex or reference emergency action plan, dam emergency action plans, and how to access the dam EAPs should an emergency rise for dams in the area. What we've seen during the reviews is on the crosswalk, they'll mention that they have a copy of all the dam EAPs, but there's no actual reference to it in the EOP on how to access those plans. And then item 68, evacuation routes and plans and shelter in place. This is describe how to conduct evacuations of neighborhoods, schools, special event venues with high concentration of children and individuals with disabilities, and provide security for the evacuation area. And then to include standardized evacuation terminology for the state of California. And for last on this part, AFN and cultural competence, those are the areas that receive the most comments, recommendations, and considerations. And those are so specific for the county that I don't have frequent ones I can really put here, and those are best done, discussed in consultations. But I did want to point out with this that the Cal OES Office of Access and Functional Needs does offer training and guidance to emergency managers and planners, disability advocates, and other service providers responding to and helping communities recover from disasters. So you can find a lot of information and resources on the Cal OES Office of Access and Functional Needs web pages. This includes a library of reference documents, one of which is the Integrated Evacuation Planning for Jurisdictions and Individuals with Access and Functional Needs. And then again, now that we're kind of halfway through this cycle to have all 58 counties reviewed, I wanted to touch on where we're at and how we're working towards this. So at the end of December of 2024, we have completed 31 of the 58 county reviews since starting this new process in 2022. And then we have 2 additional counties that started reviews in late 2024 and are nearing completion. And then we have in December, we determined the 2025 EOP review schedule, and then confirmed with the counties before finalizing. And so we have the 10 that are up for 2025 here. And then these reviews don't all start at the beginning of the year. These are staggered throughout the year so that we can focus on one county at a time instead of trying to do everything at once, and to help work with timing for each of the counties. And then while these counties are coming up, one of the goals of this presentation is to try and ease any apprehension of upcoming and future counties that they may have about this review process. We look at the review process as an opportunity to support the counties and provide a service. I mentioned before, at the end of each year, we survey the participants from that year and get feedback on what's going well and what's not. And the surveys from this year from counties that have gone through the process mentioned being apprehensive before starting, but found the process supportive, collaborative, and informative. So I'm getting a jump start on our after action follow-up, because one of the areas to improve is to let other jurisdictions know that the process is not, that they shouldn't have apprehension going in because it really was collaborative and informative. So wanted to make sure to throw that in there. So that said, with 31 counties completed, we have 12 planned for 2025. So that leaves 15 counties still to schedule and complete to have all 58 counties EOPs reviewed prior to January 1st of 2028. So I wanted to take a moment here to reiterate that if a county is planning an EOP update, we'd be happy to coordinate the timing of the review to fit your update timeline. And then I wanted to, note that the partnerships between the counties and Cal OES and between all the different branches within Cal OES not only continue to improve this process, but improves the planning for and response to future disasters. So I wanted to thank you all. Point out that you can visit the community planning webpage of the Cal OES website for more information on the review process or products, or you can email communityplanning@caloes.ca.gov. And then I haven't been able to look at the chat, so I don't know if there's any questions.
Thank you, Cari. And I do see the links in the chat as well. And I see Leah does have a comment as far as the change to shall. So I don't know if you can see that in the chat and want to comment on that. Or Leah, if you want to elaborate.
I was just asking because when we did, go ahead. Maybe I don't need to.
So the legislation has said shall. There are certain ones we have where we make not necessarily recommendations, but there's considerations because there's like different things that counties can choose, but we don't dictate how you interpret that recommendation. And that's really for the county to determine how best to implement those changes or
Sounds
those
good.
recommendations. I'm sorry, I didn't catch what you said. I think I talked over
I was
you.
just saying. No, sorry. Thank you. That sounds good. That explains it. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Cari. Do I have any other questions, comments? I don't see anything else in the chat.
Okay.
Thank you, Cari, for
Well,
your time. Oh, wait, I do have a question right here. Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, just more of a statement. We had submitted our emergency operation plan to the planning division for review about a year prior to it being submitted to our board of supervisors for their adoption of that plan. And I just wanted to say that was very, very helpful and instrumental in updating our plan and make sure that it was very complete in meeting the legal requirements prior to the review of the submission to the Board of Supervisors. So if anybody has, if they want an idea on the timing, it's good to get it to Cal OES, at least a year in advance before it has to go to your board for adoption. That is all that's just the statement I wanted to make.
Thanks, Brian. I appreciate that. Do we have any other questions for Cari before we move on? Go ahead, Cari, go ahead.
I just want to respond. So different time, ideally in an ideal world, we try and get these done within, 90 to 120 days. That being said, there are disasters, reviewers get called away. So yes, if you know you have a date that you want it done by, please communicate with that with us. So that we're aware of it. There are delays we do have some documents that take longer. There's more things to connect. There's multiple activations. We have reviewers away. So times can extend out, but we are trying to get that time shorter, but I'd say we need at least 90 days to get through the full review process if things run fairly smooth.
Thank you, Cari, again. And we'll get those slides out to everybody. Thank you so much, Cari, for your presentation. Does anybody else have any questions, comments? All right, we'll move over to Jessica for the IMAT presentation. Jessica, are you on?
Hello, can everyone hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Excellent. Let me share my presentation. Can everyone see that?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, excellent. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Jessica London, and I am the Deputy Team Leader for the IMAT, which is the Incident Management Assistance Team. It's truly an honor and pleasure to be here with you today.
I'm not seeing any questions in the chat and no hands up. So that will be our last presentation for the day. Do we have any? Actually, go ahead. We have a question up.
Yeah, and the DMAC for Area C and Lesser.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question. So you said the requesting process has to go through the operational area. Is it does it have to follow that process, or if you have an area that's completely inundated, can they put that request with coordination with the OA, but to the state?
Great question. So the regional ESC in that area will be able to help elevate your request. So even if your group may not have time to figure out exactly what's needed or things are inundated, your regional ESC will be able to take that information and they can elevate it up through their leadership and then CalES leadership in general. Does that help?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay.
Looks like we have another question. Stephen, go ahead.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Stephen Torrance, County Marin. Seeing as this is just one team, how do you guys go through and prioritize where the team is deployed if there's multiple requests?
Also a wonderful question. That is up to our leadership. That is up to our director, Nancy Ward, to see what she believes will be the best fit, what's the biggest need. We're able to start in a place and split our team if needed, or to, go out, help one group, and then demob and go to another incident if needed. At this time, since we do only have one team, if this is a successful program, of course, it would be great to build out and have multiple teams, but at the moment we can either split our team or it's really up to leadership to determine those priorities.
Thank you.
Of course. And I did see a mention in the chat about instruction document on specific process. Yes, we're working on that. Thank you for that, James. We're working on also, we had planned, to be perfectly honest, we had planned January to be a time where we were actually going out, meeting with all of the region staff, and then through them also meeting some of our operational areas. Unfortunately, Mother Nature has a way of uprooting the best laid plans. So back in beginning of December, there was a presentation at the OA Regional Summit that happened over in headquarters at CalES. That's when this concept of the IMAT was shared with some of those folks. So we had planned, January, February to do a lot of that outreach. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, but we're still planning on that development and that face-to-face contact with both our region staff as well as our operational area partners. Fortunately, we have been very intimately involved with regional leadership, including Sherry Sorrow, Dana Ellis. They've been some of our biggest supporters and with us every step of the way. So getting input on what's going to make this best for the communities in which we serve.
Thank you, Jessica. Do we have any more questions for Jessica at this time? Go ahead, DMAC.
Sorry, one last question. I'm just a little confused about the EMA requests versus support requesting this team. Do we need to put in an EMA request first? And then if that's not fulfilled, then this team can be requested, or what does that process look like?
Yes, so if you just want one specific person, like you just need one PIO, that's when you would want to go through the standard EMA request, which if anyone's here from the region, I believe that goes through, the region can help you with that. at least coordinating with that. If you want the whole actual IMAT team or parts of it, that's where you would go through also the regional ESC to work with creating an actual request that gets sent up through region leadership and then Cal OES leadership. In terms of that single resource request, the IMAT is a backstop if nothing is filled through Emma, but we just don't want it to be the first place that's looked, because if we start pulling people from the IMAT, then if we have another major deployment, we're already going to have someone kind of out from our small but mighty team. Does that kind of clarify a little bit, or clear as mud? So Emma requests, I believe those go through the region still. If someone from the region can speak to that, that would be much appreciated. But that would be the first process to go through if you just want a single resource. If you want the full team, or you want what we call a short team or a partial team, that's when you would still go through the region, but it would be specific to an actual IMAT deployment request.
So I want to just clarify. Thank you for that. So if just speaking from experience in responding to the Eaton fire in Pasadena, that process to get the Emma request going takes a little bit of time. So I'm just thinking about, in terms of timing, how quickly we can get resources down into the area. Once that request is made, I think you mentioned a turnaround time once requested, but realistically, what have you seen in the past on, by the time you receive that request, how many days into the incident typically are you? And then how quickly is the turnaround once you've been given those orders to deploy?
Understood. So I will say I have not worked through an Emma process before. So I unfortunately am not qualified to answer that. I'm happy to find that out for everyone on this call. Or if someone on this call has worked through the Emma process, that would be great as well. In terms of the IMAT request being filed from the region up through their leadership and then to Nancy, we are a brand new team. So this has been our first big deployment, has actually been down here at the JFO in Pasadena. The process on getting it through the actual regional ESC into their leadership and into Nancy can be very, very quick and expedited, just due to the nature of how big of an event it is. Once my team gets word and that we actually have direction and the green light, that is when we can be down here within, or be anywhere within that 12-hour period. I unfortunately don't have a good timeline for how long it takes leadership to validate. I think that depends on the urgency of the matter or the scale at which it is. Sorry, I don't have more specifics for you.
No, that's okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
I wish I did. I'm sorry. I'm trying.
Thank you, Jessica. Brandy.
I just have a couple questions regarding, I know there was a mention of prioritizing where the resources would go if there's multiple requests or multiple incidents happening. In your structure, would it be that if there are multiple local cities asking for assistance, would the assistance go to the OA just because that's who's supposed to be supporting those local cities in that particular operational area, or could your team be broken up and help the cities versus the OA?
Okay, I see what you're saying. Honestly, that decision would come from above my level. That would be made from our director on where she sees the biggest need or is the best utilization of the team. I don't doubt that we could be split up to provide that direct support if it's coming from multiple different cities and be hands-on in that way. But that determination is unfortunately or fortunately made far above my level.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. I'm loving all the questions, by the way. There was no questions and now there's everyone and I love it.
Thank you. I saw Ryan Derby had his hand up. Did you have a question or was that answered?
Disregard, please.
No problem. It looks like Scotty, go ahead.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
So one thing I think we have to consider in regards to this discussion is for the one-off, for the multiple incidents, is the use of max in the operational area. And we talk about prioritization, right? So that starts at the operational area where multiple incidents in multiple cities and with the requests have to be channeled through the operational area so they can determine what their priorities are for the operational area. And then that communication goes to Cal OES with either through the region duty officer or SAC to make a determination of who gets what. By going direct is going to cause problems for, again, setting the critical resource needs for that operational area. So I just think we have to keep that in mind.
Yes, thank you for that feedback. And as I said before too, this is a brand new team. We are open to all sorts of feedback so that we can best figure out this process, not create more strain or bureaucracy, but more getting the help quickly to what's needed in a coordinated fashion. So always welcome to have those discussions. Our all of our standard operating procedures and our continuity of operations and all of that is being constantly rewritten, especially after going out on this most current assignment. So thank you for that. I think I saw another hand.
Yeah, Abraham, was your question answered or did you have a question?
No, yeah, it was answered. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Anybody have any other questions, comments? I don't see anything in the chat. All right, that's going to be our last presentation. Thank you so much, everybody that presented today, and you can send over your slides. That way I'll get it out to the team. It looks like our next meeting will be on May 12th. If I don't hear anything else, it looks like we'll go ahead and close this for the day. Thank you so much. Actually, go ahead, Joel. Did you have a question?
Can you hear me?
I can hear
didn't.
you.
Yeah,
Okay.
I meant to do a clap, not a raise, like a hand clap for the final of the meeting. But yeah, the hand.
It's
For
okay.
me.
I appreciate
Talk to you
the
later.
clap. All right,
Okay,
bye-bye.
bye.